Hello and welcome. I'm Jono Hayes and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios. And these are our top stories. JD Vance meets Netanyahu in Jerusalem, warning the US and its allies have a tough task ahead of them in Gaza. Moscow strikes Kiev after Ukraine used British-made missiles on Russia, as Trump calls off talks with Putin. And seeing double, Eurostar announces plans to roll out double-decker trains through the Channel Tunnel. JD Vance has met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel today, as he says the Gaza deal is going better than expected. The US Vice President and his wife Usha Vance were welcomed by Netanyahu and his wife Sarah in Jerusalem. That's before giving a joint press conference. Vance acknowledged the US and its allies had a very tough task ahead as he addressed the media. Take a listen to this.
It's going to take a lot of work. I was in the CMCC, which we opened up yesterday. A lot of our Israeli friends working together with a lot of Americans to actually mediate this entire ceasefire process, to get some of the critical infrastructure off the ground, from the international security force to some of the reconstruction of Gaza. It's not easy. I never said it was easy, but what I am is optimistic that the ceasefire is going to hold and that we can actually build a better future in the entire Middle East.
Now, for more on this story, I'm joined from Riyadh by Nas Daily. Nas, thanks for joining us. Well, you've built your platform around storytelling and about human connection as well. What's your read on how people are processing this ceasefire narrative online right now?
Yeah, first of all, Jono, thank you for having me. I'm calling you from Saudi Arabia. It's good to be here. I wish I could be with you in the studio. Look, the ceasefire, every ceasefire is a good ceasefire. It's good for the world. Not as many people dying, we're heading towards peace, and I think that's really, really important. Everybody I know, I think the general sentiment is that of optimism. So, you know, but I still think there's a bit of a question mark whether actually all 20 points will be, will be executed or not, and that's still a question for everybody.
I guess, Naz, when JD Vance says stuff like he's optimistic about the truce as well, you have to look at the global audience, which you're directly connected into. And if we just simply look at the 14 million people who are following you on YouTube alone, do you think the audience globally are going to buy that optimism? Are they maybe a bit skeptical of this right now?
Look, here's how I think about it. If you know nothing about the conflict, you're optimistic. If you know a lot about the conflict, you're not as optimistic. So I'll leave it as that. So those that are let's say, armchair viewers of the conflict, I think overall they're happy. But the ones that really understand Hamas, really understand Israel, really understand the region, I think there's a couple of question marks.
As somebody like yourself with, I want to say a foot in either camp, but I'll delve more into that in a second. You're Israeli-Palestinian. You've publicly discussed this at length before on your channels. How do you view this? Because you effectively are both. I guess that's the best way to describe it. What do you feel when you see this peace process on the border of a breakdown?
Look, I'm one of the lucky ones. I understand Israel better than anybody else because I am Israeli. I also understand Palestinians better than anybody else because I am Palestinian. There's only 2 million people like me in the world that can see both sides. And I'll tell you this very honestly. The best thing that could happen to the Palestinians and Palestine is the defeat of Hamas. That is the best thing that could happen. And the best thing that could happen to the Israelis is the defeat of Hamas. The same thing is the best thing that could happen to both Israelis and Palestinians. This is a very rare moment. We both have the same goal: no more terrorism. And I think we're getting closer to it than ever before.
Naz, the return of the hostages, and Hamas has released 2 more hostage bodies as well. The emotional impact on that for you as someone who's Israeli, when we saw the return of the Israeli live hostages in Hostage Square, that was a huge pivotal moment. And again, it was difficult not to be moved to tears seeing that. Likewise, on the opposite end of that, we saw Palestinians who'd been held as prisoners, who'd been returned to their families as well. And again, tears were on many people's faces when we saw something like that. What do you think the public sentiment is, especially on social media where you are so active, when people see this and say, okay, we're moving in the right direction?
Do you want the honest answer or just a TV answer?
I want the honest answer from you.
Good. Okay. The honest answer is, I think those that are pro-Palestine, anti-Israel have dehumanized every Israeli. So they did not feel much about the hostages. Those that are pro-Israel and anti-Palestine, they didn't feel much either about the Palestinian prisoners because we have also dehumanized the Palestinian side. There is dehumanization from both sides. So the question is, did you shed any tears? Depends on which side of this conflict you're on. That's essentially what happened. If you ask for my personal opinion, my honest personal opinion, I was sad. I was really sad because sad at the amount of lives that were lost over the last 2 years that were unnecessary. We didn't have to do this war. We didn't have to go through all of this. We really, the Middle East, and I'm saying this as a Middle Eastern, we need to put an end to radical extremism. This is very important in southern Lebanon, in Hamas, in Iran. In Syria, we gotta put an end to this radical extremism. And I'm just sad that this radical extremism has led to so many lives lost for Palestinians and Israelis.
The US are involved heavily now, and we're seeing this. We've seen J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, Marco Rubio is arriving tomorrow as well. It's kind of all hands on deck. Does it feel like the US really wants to get the ceasefire back on track from your point of view? Do you think it's in their best interest, but also in a global interest, that we just keep this ceasefire and keep the peace for as long as possible?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of saving face that is needed. You have your entire reputation on the line as the US government, as Trump, as J.D. Vance, as Qatar, as Turkey. You've put your reputation on the line that this will happen. And if it doesn't happen, you kind of lose a bit of reputation. So I'm optimistic that the parties involved on the other side will uphold their commitment. Otherwise, it's a really bad look.
Would you go to Gaza? You've gone to some places, and I've loved your videos for a very, very long time, and I've seen some of the places you've gone to. I've been inspired by the videos that you've done on places that you've gone and things that you've seen. Would Gaza be on the list of Nas Daily to go in and see the damage that has been done, but also give hope to people to say, well, here's what's in line for the future?
First of all, I appreciate you watching Nas Daily, and thank you for knowing exactly what Nas Daily is. We try to really show hope in many places where there's sometimes no hope. Nas Daily has gone to the West Bank, and I've bought an apartment in the West Bank to support the economy, and I made countless videos supporting Palestinians. I have not gone to Gaza because I'm not allowed to. I cannot access Gaza. And so if I have the ability to, I would love to. I mean, Gaza is extremely complicated, and now it's an active war zone. And generally, I try to stay away from active war zones like Russia, Ukraine, or Nigeria, or Sudan. I try to stay away from active war zones. But when things calm down, I would love to take a visit and make the Nas Daily videos.
And we know that some of the news outlets that you mentioned have been in that war zone as well. But Nas, I want to say it was an honor to have you on the show, and thanks for chatting to us. And it was unusual for us to have a guest who has both the Israeli and the Palestinian perspective all in one. So thanks for having a chat to us on W News. Appreciate it. Now, Ukraine says it used British-made Storm Shadow missiles in a massive strike on a Russian chemical plant in the Bryansk region. The attack penetrated Russian air defences and could draw new threats from Moscow. It came as Russian strikes killed 7 people in Ukraine, while US President Donald Trump shelved talks with Vladimir Putin, calling them a wasted meeting. Let's head to London to discuss this in more detail. We're going to speak to defence and security analyst Tobias Ellwood. Tobias, thanks for joining us. Ukraine using British-made Storm Shadow missiles inside Russia. This is somewhat of an escalation, potentially. What is the message that's been sent to Moscow by this action?
Well, it's, I think, been that characteristic of this conflict from the very, very start, that we've had a big debate. I mean, using that word, oh, isn't this escalation that we're using another type of missile? We either support Ukraine or we don't. We're either in it 100% or we're not. And if we want Ukraine to survive, to win, to be able to claim any form of victory, we need to give them the tools to be able to push Russia back. And if we don't, then we might as well give up. You might as well not give anything at all. You might as well just go straight for a ceasefire or indeed just appease Russia. So the fact that we're now seeing Storm Shadow missiles, which, yes, is a very, very potent missile system which can hit Russian targets at range, we shouldn't be surprised that this is now being utilized. I have been a huge critic of this public debate from the very start, whether it's been anti-tank weapons, whether it's been tanks themselves, F-16s, and now long-range missiles. Let's remain committed to make sure that we give Ukraine the tools that they require. And Tomahawks should be included in that. Taurus missiles that the Germans make. The fact is that we've been too timid. We've been spooked by Putin all along because he's like threatening to press the nuclear button. If he's allowed to use weapon systems fired from deep inside Russia, from bases far away from the Ukrainian border, then they become, according to international law, legitimate targets for Ukraine to fight back at. And that's exactly what happened here. So whilst it has happened, we should not be surprised. Indeed, we need to see more of that if we're seriously going to stand up to Putin and support Ukraine.
Now, there is the question and the concern, and I think rightly so, that this could trigger direct retaliation. It could even change Russia's calculus in the war. Is there a concern in the UK that that might be the case?
Well, of course, you need to keep your eye on the escalatory ladder as we see. But the idea that they then retaliate against Britain is something that they will make the same calculation about, recognizing that it won't be just an attack against Britain, of course, it will be an attack against NATO itself. And this goes to the very heart of what exactly is happening here. This is a sovereign state, a democratic state that's been invaded 3 years ago, and the West has not done enough to stand up to the adversary. And the discussions that we've had, you mentioned in your introduction that we're going to have another summit in Budapest, now been cancelled. Why? Because nothing was going to come out of it. Putin himself has taken full advantage of the confusing position that America, or particularly Trump, has had in handling this particular issue. Trump has demanded that Europe spend more on its weapon systems, quite rightly, that NATO should invest more in its defense posture. That has now happened. But when there's to be so collective effort to strengthen Europe, which is in America's interest as well, then we've been found wanting. And this summit has collapsed, but it still begs the question, what is our strategy to look Putin in the eye, to help Ukraine, and to make sure that this war doesn't spill beyond the borders of that particular country?
Well, let's just come back to that for 1 second. As you mentioned, Trump has postponed this Putin meeting, saying it's a waste of a meeting. What does that actually say about Washington, their current leverage, or maybe their position on that? May it have changed, or has it remained steadfast?
Yeah, I mean, this is the key question, because we're waiting for Donald Trump to catch up with European thinking, to recognize that Putin isn't somebody that you can trust, that the Kremlin isn't a place that you can do deals with, that we cannot actually expect Russia to be committed to any long-term ceasefire. These are the things Europe knows. But America, or particularly Trump, somehow believes that you could get round the table and knock heads together and secure a short-term deal. And you'd hope slowly, when he came to the NATO summit in The Hague not long ago, he then said, now I recognize, what Russia is doing. Let's have those secondary sanctions. Let's stand up to Putin. And then he gets a call from Putin, who then manages to somehow persuade him to then row back. And that's exactly where we were with Budapest. And I believe now it's time for Europe just to recognize we can't rely on America at the moment. They are our closest security ally. And it's not good when America and Europe are not on the same page security-wise, because adversaries, not just Russia, but China and others, take advantage of that. But if we want to stop Russia's wider geopolitical ambition to alter the lines of the Europe's map once again, then we have to look beyond Ukraine, and we have to invest far more than just in Storm Shadow missiles, but a wider effort to hold Russia back.
Tobias, Zelensky saying that Russia is less interested in diplomacy. Seems like it may be a fair assessment at this stage.
Oh, it is. And Russia is a wily operator. Why are they attacking or sending drones into Poland and the Baltics? It's because it then focuses NATO's efforts to say, well, we better shore up our own defenses and not bother with Ukraine, not recognizing that this is actually a Europe problem as a whole. That what Russia is doing is actually resorting to type. This is what previous leaders going back centuries have done. Russia is a very difficult place to defend. And historically, they've known the best way to defend is to attack. And they've been humbled and humiliated after the fall of the Cold War. This is what it all goes down for, is Putin's long-term legacy to recalibrate and rebuild Russia as a superpower, knowing, which complicates matters, that China has now got Russia's back. And it's these big geopolitical challenges that I'm afraid we're still wanting Donald Trump to wake up and recognize. China is the long-term strategic challenge, but not dealing with Russia right now will make that challenge all the more complicated when the alliance between Russia and China continues to develop and get stronger and stronger.
And just a very quick one before I let you go, Tobias. The UK's decision to authorise these strikes outside of Ukraine's border, why is that such a big deal? Why is that significant?
Well, it is significant operationally because, as I said, otherwise we're seeing all these long-range drone attacks taking place from Russia, meaning it's very, very one-sided indeed. Legally, it's the right thing to do, but you're right in your questioning that you raised, that it could provide some form of escalatory or retaliatory response. But we need to have that Cold War statecraft skill set to look at our enemy in the eye and recognize how far back we can push without losing control of where this all might go.
Tobias Ellwood, there we must leave it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now let's take a look at some of the other stories that are making headlines today. President Trump has repeated his promise that India will cut Russian oil imports. That's after a phone call between the US President and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Modi has acknowledged the call and Diwali festival greetings, but did not comment on the topic of Russian oil. At least 46 people have been killed in a multi-vehicle collision in Uganda. Two buses travelling in opposite directions collided head-on while trying to overtake two other vehicles on the Kampala-Gulu highway. An investigation is currently underway. The Louvre Museum in Paris has reopened its doors 3 days after the theft of jewels worth over $100 million. The Apollo Gallery, where the theft occurred, remains closed. The museum director faces questioning by the Senate as investigators analyse fingerprints which have been found at the site of the robbery. Mosquitoes have been found in Iceland for the first time. It's after the country broke multiple records for its high temperatures this year. Now, Iceland was one of only 2 mosquito-free havens in the world. That's mostly due to its cold climate. The only other known mosquito-free zone is Antarctica. And an Australian man has been charged with stealing $5,800 worth of Labubu dolls. Victoria Police raided the 40-year-old man's residence and recovered 43 of the dolls. He will appear before Melbourne Magistrates Court in May of next year and is currently out on bail. It comes as the doll makers launch a mini version of the monster-themed toy amid soaring sales. North Korea has fired multiple ballistic missiles days before President Trump and other world leaders are expected to meet in South Korea. It's the first launch of its kind for months, and also the first since South Korea elected Lee Jae-myung as its new president. Patrick Falk has this report.
Well, according to South Korea, it detected several projectiles believed to be short-range ballistic missiles on Wednesday morning local time. They're believed to have been launched from an area south of the North Korean capital, Pyongyang, and flew about 350 kilometers towards the northeast. There weren't any further specifics offered by the South's Joint Chief of Staff, except also to say the missiles didn't land in the sea. Now, the timing doesn't come as much of a surprise. Experts have been saying that North Korea may well conduct missile tests as an act of provocation around the timing of the APEC summit. This is part of an effort to gain recognition as a nuclear weapons state, which it needs in order for it to call on the UN to lift economic sanctions for its weapons program. The developments prompted a response from Japan's new government just a day after Sanai Takaichi became the country's new prime minister. Let's take a listen into what Japan's cabinet chief secretary Minoru Kihara had to say.
In order to protect the people of Japan, the Takaichi administration would like to continue working closely with the United States and South Korea, doing our utmost to gather and analyze necessary information as well as monitor the situation.
Notably, this was the first such launch since Lee Jae-myung came to power in South Korea. He's been promoting a platform of engagement with the North, but there's little doubt who North Korea is targeting its message at. Donald Trump is set to leave for Asia at the end of the week in what will be his first visit to the region since taking office second time round. He's actually said that he hopes to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un potentially this year. Pyongyang says it's open to future talks, but has also said Washington has to give up what it calls its delusional demand for North Korea to give up its nuclear arsenal. Last month, it showcased its newest and most powerful intercontinental ballistic missile, the Hwasong-20, described as having a strike range that knows no bounds.
Patrick Falk reporting for us there. Eurostar has announced plans to introduce double-decker trains through the Channel Tunnel for the very first time. The rail operator, which links London to Paris and to Brussels, will order up to 50 of these trains, increasing the fleet by nearly a third. The deal is said to be worth around €2 billion. We're now going to go live to London to speak to our correspondent, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, thanks for joining us. Eurostar going double-decker. Why are they making this move now?
Well, the reason they are making this move now is really quite a simple one. It's to try and increase capacity as much as they possibly can. Now, Eurostar is saying that from their annual numbers of around 19 million passengers at the moment, they hope to get up to around 30 million passengers as a target. So capacity is a big factor here. You can get obviously many more seats in a double-decker train, and if you run them back to back, as happens at the moment with 200-meter trains here at St Pancras, that means a 400-meter double-decker train of around 1,000 passengers a time. So that could mean more passengers getting through the Channel Tunnel from St Pancras here in London to some of those European destinations which prove so popular. One other element to all of this when it comes to capacity is that there have been various efforts underway to try and boost competition as well as capacity on this cross-channel tunnel line. Now, obviously, one of the difficulties with that is you only have one tunnel underneath the channel. Now, experts believe you can still boost capacity on the lines that you already have running through the channel, but at the moment it's effectively a monopoly for Eurostar, the company, and the services that they operate. And so there are various other companies trying to get into this market in different ways and try and operate on these same lines. It appears that Eurostar is trying to get ahead of the curve in that regard and try and boost capacity in this way, I guess, to try and take on as many of those possible new customers that they think there might be out there as possible.
Ollie, what does it mean for your average day-to-day passenger who may be using this as a commute or just for vacation if they're travelling through the Channel Tunnel? What in real terms does it mean?
Well, one of the things it should mean is more options, more seats available, and therefore the hope is from industry watchers that potentially you could see some cheaper seats available for customers as well. As you quite rightly say, it's not just people who are going on holiday either here in the UK from the European continent or in the other direction. There are a lot of people who use this line for daily, if not weekly, commuting, and if there are more seats on offer, then that could feed through into lower prices, particularly if that extra competition comes on board. In purely practical and simple terms, it would mean that some passengers get to sit upstairs. The existing trains are not much smaller in height than the new trains that are going to be brought on board, but it will mean that there are two levels and therefore a slightly different travelling experience when it comes to heading through the tunnel.
So how big is this investment, Ollie, first of all, for post-Brexit cross-channel confidence? This surely is a game changer. And when could passengers realistically see this train in action?
Yeah, it's a major investment from Eurostar. You were saying earlier, 2 billion euros or so, depending on exactly how far this deal goes. And that's because there is an initial order of trains in the region of 30, and that could go up to 50 trains eventually. Now, when it comes to the post-Brexit nature of all of this, one other thing to factor into that is those extra checks between the UK and the continent of Europe that have been brought in recently, and there have been some concerns about whether they would add to delays, and we have seen those delays at European airports in recent weeks. For example, here at St Pancras, things have been running pretty smoothly so far when it comes to those extra identification checks that the European Union entry system requires. One of the other elements to this is that Eurostar have already announced extra routes from London. They're going to be travelling in the coming years to cities like Geneva and Frankfurt, so opening up the options in terms of travelling destination beyond Paris and Brussels, as we see at the moment. So a growing number of cities that can be serviced by Eurostar, and so that does mean a growing number of connections between the UK and continental Europe. And of course, for many commuters and many campaigners, there is an environmental element to all of this as well. The ability, if there are more train options to and from Europe, to sometimes, for some customers, to avoid, if they want to, a flight and get on a train instead.
Ollie Barrett joining us at the home of the Eurostar, St Pancras in London. Thank you so much. Let's take a look at the top business news for today. China has surpassed the US as Germany's largest trading partner. German imports and exports with China reached over $100 billion from January to August. Trade dynamics shifted after Donald Trump's return to the White House and the imposition of renewed tariffs. The cyber attack on Jaguar Land Rover cost the British economy over $2 billion. Cyber Monitoring Centre said the hack is most economically as a cyber attack event in UK history. The online breach began in late August and caused an IT shutdown and also a halt in Jaguar Land Rover manufacturing operations globally. And let's turn to sport now. Arsenal beat Atletico Madrid 4-0 on Tuesday, securing a third successive championship win. The English team made Championship League history, becoming the first side to win 7 consecutive games against Spanish opposition. Arsenal will next face English Premier League side Crystal Palace on Sunday. And American professional golfer Keegan Bradley fears he will never get over the defeat of a home defeat at Bethpage Black last month. The 39-year-old has now lost 3 Ryder Cups as a player and a captain. According to US media, Tiger Woods is one of the betting favourites likely to replace Bradley as the American Ryder Cup captain. Now, the makers of ChatGPT are hoping to rival Google as they launch a brand new AI-powered web browser called Atlas. Unlike Chrome, Atlas will not require an address bar to search, and Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, says Atlas has been built around ChatGPT, as the new web browser was made available on Apple. Let's find out more about this. Dr. Anas Najdawi is the Associate Professor and Media Speaker in the UAE and the Middle East. Dr. Anas, thanks for joining us. First of all, OpenAI is launching its own browser. This feels like a big, big play. What's the goal of Sam Altman and OpenAI here?
Well, definitely this will be a very big strategic move from OpenAI, where the company is trying to tap into the new trends in the market and try to build maybe a new revenue stream that never existed before, and building up on the change that is happening globally of the behavior of users, where actually they are more dependent on using these language models in order to find information or to search. But not only this, now we are in a time that these kind of platforms are being used as more as agentic or assisting us in order to do many tasks that we never used to have before.
I guess we've seen so much change in the last couple of years, as you rightly said, with the advent of AI as well, but we're seeing some images. I'm guessing developers have had this at their hand and at their disposal for quite a little while before we've seen it in the public market. What's different in Atlas versus Chrome versus Edge versus Safari? What's the change?
Well, the core concept and the philosophy, so these traditional softwares that we are using to navigate through Chrome, and we are actually searching and clicking in order to find information or to search to get an answer. While in the new AI-powered experience, we are actually changing the behavior of users, where we are having conversation, and also we are empowering the AI to do things instead of us. So the whole thing is completely different, and we are actually we are threatening the market that has been established for more than 20 years, dominated by Google, where actually they are generating a lot of revenue from such kind of business by affiliated marketing and by generating advertisement through click and pay. And so all of these actually business models is completely now revolutionized with the agentic, I will call it, commerce.
It's early days for Atlas, so we're still finding out more about it, but something that they have spoken about is agent mode, which anyone who's a user of ChatGPT will be aware is already there, but there are some privacy concerns with that. What is agent mode? Why would I be concerned about my privacy?
Think about you would like to do a task. For example, you want to book for an airline or hotel. Normally what we do is we go through multiple websites, and actually we open a lot of tabs. And what's going to happen, or is going to actually be experienced through Atlas, is that tool will understand you, will have a history about your preferences, and you can search something like this. Could you please find me something similar to the trip I had last year with a different location or a different price? So it can build up on the historical conversation you have done, and no need to juggle between different sources. You are actually having one conversation, and it will give you access to all of these sources, and you are actually giving power to the agent in order to go and make transactions, which actually has been announced that OpenAI is building up some kind of collaboration and partnership with different companies that are actually could generate service for the end users in terms of booking or reserving or a kind of enhancing the experience, the e-commerce.
Are we then likely to see something akin to, I guess, what we've seen with Google, whereby those who pay more are more likely to get booked because they are using Atlas as a service?
Well, definitely. This is something that's going to change completely the market and the philosophy and the users' behavior toward. And I believe now the timing is putting this kind of announcement where Google is finding a lot of challenges with the antitrust and the pressures coming to against this company in order to break down or to actually minimize the domination they have in the market, in the digital marketing and the advertising market in general. And we think that slowly, maturely, we will have more into customers that are adopting these models, definitely.
Well, what we're seeing right now, I guess, is an early adopter hype more than anything else, and that may fizzle out. Will Google likely be worried right now? Will there be crisis talks that are taking place to say how they can up their game, as we've seen them bring AI into search histories in just the last couple of months?
I don't really think that Google will underestimate this. Of course, they have made a lot of great investments and products and tools, and I believe the problem is that this kind of disruptive technology is hitting the business model, actually, and it's not easy to change completely the business model, how you generate revenue. 90-80% Google is used to generate from the advertising and from the digital marketing. Now we have a lot of investment in AI because Google understand, but it will take, that's a good actually competition and healthy, that we will maybe probably see a lot of maybe new products that can be enhancing our experience as users, could probably change the whole e-commerce market.
And I guess every other week we're seeing something new that is AI-driven, that is AI-powered. Sam Altman has been at the forefront of this from the very get-go with OpenAI. Is he now probably one of the big tech players joining the ranks of Bill Gates and of Apple? Is he at that level?
I guess that the competition is, of course, is rising between all the players. As we see the technological development are actually exponential in the technology and in the service is provided, and huge adoption by users. So we don't expect that one dominant player will actually dominate. We see that it's being democratized somehow, and everyone is invited to compete in this market and work in order to provide an added value with their products and services.
We're just seeing it jump leaps and bounds, and before I let you go, I just want to ask, AI is getting somewhat more autonomous in how it acts. Is there a concern from someone in a field such as yourself that it will at some stage become almost sentient in how it operates? Is that really a concern?
Definitely. There are a lot of concerns, especially with the governance model, how these kind of agents are controlled, working, or taking decisions. So we need still the governance model that are ruling these kind of systems, not that mature enough. And we need to make sure that we classify where to use this technology in processes or tasks that are maybe classified high risk or lower risk, and so on. So I believe we will continue to see a lot of major advancement in the AI, and but we need more, faster adoption or improvement of the governance model and legal system that is confining how to use and what to use and when not to use AI.
It's giving iRobot vibes just a little bit. Well, there we must leave it. Dr. Najdawi, thank you so much for joining us. And a reminder of our top stories this evening. JD Vance meets Netanyahu in Jerusalem, warning the US and its allies have a tough task ahead of them in Gaza. Moscow strikes Kiev after Ukraine used British-made missiles on Russia as Trump calls off talks with Putin. And scene double. Eurostar announces plans to roll out double-decker trains through the Channel Tunnel. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget, as always, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X, and we'll be back in just a couple of hours with W News Extra. But for now, goodbye.